Y'all, and welcome into the Jack Vita Show. I am your host, Jack Vita, alongside Jack Sommers. Jack and Jack, first time we ever done this, first time in Jack Vita Show history, I think. Jack and Jack.
We're all jacked up.
And it's funny that this is the first time I'm having you on because I feel like I've known you forever. But it's only been like not even a couple years since I first met you.
Well, sometimes you make a friend, you just know that that person's been a friend your whole life somehow.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So that's Jack Sommers. Jack runs the Diamondbacks site on Sports Illustrated. It's Diamondbacks on SI, Jack. That's what you guys are.
Yeah, Arizona Diamondbacks on SI.
So he's the publisher. He's also a beat reporter that covers the Diamondbacks and also an awesome dude. So the Diamondbacks made some big news this past week. They signed Corbin Burnes, and just a little bit before that, they also made a trade for Josh Naylor. We've got two former Diamondbacks first basemen signing contracts. So the last time we spoke, Rhett Bollinger was here. We broke down basically everything that was going on free agent-wise, which was basically, I guess, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So now we're going to give you a little update on the biggest news. It's funny that it's all Diamondbacks-centric, it seems. Comes back to Arizona. So we're going to do that today. It's the final day of the 2024 year, and we're both repping Arizona State with the big game tomorrow. So how about that? So, all right, Jack, let's lead off with this. Corbin Burnes, this was a big shocker to the baseball world. I know I was shocked. I got the notification from Bob Nightingale at, I think it was like 12:30 Central Time. It was a Friday night. I think it was Friday night.
Right.
Did you know that this was potentially in the works or an option? When did you become aware that this could maybe happen?
I did not know. I had no clue that this was happening. Subsequently, sources told me that they really started getting close in their discussions last Monday, Monday evening. And then essentially over the next few days, they closed in on it and they announced it Friday night, right after the Christmas holiday. Burnes essentially had been fielding the market. Boris had been fielding the market, but he really wanted to pitch here in Arizona. Bottom line is he lives here with his three small kids and his wife. And, a couple of years ago, the Diamondbacks were actually trying to trade for Corbin Burnes. And he really wanted to come here. But at that time, the Diamondbacks weren't willing to pay the price to get him. That was a mid-season deal, potentially. And so, he got some offers out there. Was reportedly had 7 245 offers from the Giants. He ended up taking 6 210 with deferrals with the Diamondbacks. So a little less guaranteed money, but he has an opt-out after 2 years. So he's got flexibility. But bottom line is he went to the Diamondbacks and said, hey, can we make something work? Mike Hazen was in New Zealand with his 3 sons when all this was happening. He was on vacation. And from what I understand, actually, Ken Kendrick probably was very much at the forefront of some of these negotiations, which isn't surprising anyway, because, this involves a lot of financial maneuvering to make it work. And, so any deal would have had to closely involve the ownership to make this happen anyway. So, just the timing, Burnes went to them. Hazen was out of the country. Not that, everyone's got cell phones and right. All of that. But, bottom line is ownership was heavily involved here.
Well, I find what this whole thing is really interesting and refreshing in a way, too, because I think so much you hear about players when they pick a team that you hear a lot of talk about, oh, this guy wants to go to this spot because he wants to win, or this guy is going to get the most amount of money with this team, so he's signing there. You don't hear enough about quality of life, of like, where do you want to live? Where do you want to raise your family? Where are you going to be the most happy? Because that's something that is always, I shouldn't say it surprises me, but there's a disconnect between me and some of these players, because when I think about some of this stuff, I remember talking about this on the show 6 years ago when Machado signed with the Padres, and it was like, oh, the Padres were kind of far from, they weren't that close to really contending, and then I guess 2020 they spiked and they got a lot better. But I remember thinking like, man, that just sounds like a great life to just live in San Diego. I'd be super happy there. I could go to the beach all the time. It's sunny every single day. That's what I would value. So to me, it's like I would want to go play for the Diamondbacks or the Padres, and I wouldn't really be, I know that that's where I'd be the most happy. That's where I'd have the most stable life. And I think that it's also an underrated factor when it comes to performance too. If a guy goes somewhere that he's not super comfortable, it's not somewhere that he's really happy, then, maybe there's a reason why he's struggling a little bit when he gets to a new team.
Yeah, I think when it comes to human beings and life decisions and where people fall, it's a lot like the mixing bar, at a music studio, right? Where are you sliding those buttons, and what are your priorities, and what weighs the most for you in your personal decision calculus? Clearly he wasn't going to leave $100 million on the table just to play in Arizona. But it's already generational type money that he's making here. And so if you can make it work, then certainly as long as the money's reasonably close, then those factors, really start to come more to the forefront. The other thing too is, Diamondbacks have a solid organization, right? They've really turned it around. They got a pretty strong core. They got a lot of free agents leaving next year. So, they're going to have to fill some holes after 2025. But, and they play in the toughest division. It's toughest to get, one of the toughest divisions. I'm actually working on that. I'm doing an analysis article on that part. But, certainly a difficult division to win with the behemoth Dodgers sitting up top. So, there's that factor too. If you want to make sure you're on a division winner, go sign with an NL Central team. That's your best shot, right? Because, that division's it's not very strong, but it's very close from top to bottom. So sorry about
that. You're good, man. You're good. I'm just mourning the loss of this Bears season right now. It's like, if only the NFC North and the NL Central could flip in difficulty. If the NFC North was a soft division, I'd be happy. But no, to your point, Diamondbacks obviously were in the World Series a little over a year ago. It's a really good team. They had the best record in the second half at one point. They were red hot. I thought that they might make a move and steal the division away. They were, I think, at 1.3 games back was the closest they were. And so this is a really good team. It's not like he's saying, I don't want to win or anything like that. This is a situation where he can win. He can pitch in the playoffs. And he can be in a situation where he wants to be in. This is where he values. This is where he wants to raise his family. Now, one thing I find really interesting, Jack, is I've heard a lot of Diamondbacks fans. I'll give a shout out here to my friend JJ Steele, because he is always bringing this up every time. He's like, we got to do something about this deferred money. It's like, oh man, the Dodgers are able to sign these guys and they can just pay them off later. Well, the Diamondbacks did a little bit of this deferred money. How does all this work, Jack?
So in the Corbin Burnes contract, they essentially have $60 million deferred. $10 million of his base salary is deferred every year of the contract to then start to begin to get paid to him once the contract ends. Now he has an opt out after 2 years, so that could end at that point should he opt out. So the way MLB rules work, and this goes back to the Colangelo years when he was running the Diamondbacks, because in the early 2000s, he deferred up over $200 million worth of salary. And the MLB got very nervous about that. And it's kind of also known as the Colangelo rule. Now, whenever a team defers money, they must fund an escrow account, with the funds being deferred for that season by July 1 of the following year. So within 18 months. So for example, Corbin Burnes, if he's got $10 million of his salary deferred for the 2025 championship season, that $10 million must be placed in an account by July 1, 2026. So it gives the Diamondbacks a little bit more flexibility with their cash flow in 2025, but it's not completely kicked down the road. Now that $10 million, obviously, it can go into an investment account. I'm sure MLB has certain rules about stability of what type of accounts they can use. I don't have exactly those details, but clearly they can make money from those accounts. They can earn interest. They can earn investment income. So the $210 million is actually probably valued, I think, for competitive balance tax issues at about 192, give or take. Where people get all bent out of shape with the Dodgers is that they've deferred so much, but they still have to fund all those accounts. So all those deferred, Shohei Ohtani, $68 million a year. Well, they have to put that money into an account by the first year, what they deferred in 24, into an account by July 1st of this year. However, the amount that they need to fund is according to the calculation of the long-term value of the money. In Ohtani's case, it's $46 million, not $68. So where that really makes the biggest difference for the Dodgers is it helps keep them from going so far over the luxury tax. That's the biggest savings for them. They're by deferring so much, they're not gaming the system, but they're gaining an advantage of not having to pay as much luxury tax as they otherwise would. The Diamondbacks are not anywhere near the luxury tax threshold, so that's not a factor for them. It's just the time value of money that they're saving a bit. If MLB wants to make changes to the way they handle deferrals, that's probably something they'll consider and talk about. But even Ken Kendrick, the owner of the Diamondbacks, last year when he spoke to us about the Dodgers deferrals, he said the Dodgers are not gaming the system. What they're doing is legit. And this is a rival owner from a division. I wrote a whole article about it. Ken Kendrick says Dodgers not gaming the system, and where I explain all this in the article. I think if you have other owners in the same division from a small to mid-market team saying, hey, what the Dodgers is doing is legit, fans probably need to dial down a little bit of their outrage, and they need to understand maybe a little bit more about how these actually work. It's hard. It's complicated. It looks bad on the surface. It looks worse on the surface.
You don't see this as any kind of problem for Major League Baseball, you would say?
I would say there's somewhat of a problem because it does allow one or two teams to significantly reduce their luxury tax that they have to pay should they choose to go this route. And that's, clearly an issue because that's less money for mid and smaller market luxury tax recipients to get, right? So, I think that is something that they'll probably want to address in the next CBA, but, we'll see. Next CBA is going to be a poop show anyway, because MLB's hell-bent.
Rumblings already. People are not looking forward to that one, and we're only 2 years out from it, so it should be a lot of fun. Enjoy the baseball for the next 2 years, guys, because we'll see what happens. All right, so lastly on this Burnes thing, what kind of impact is adding a Corbin Burnes to this rotation that they have?
Well, obviously, it's huge. The guy is there's been a lot written about it, including on our site. He's got different changes in his peripherals and what happened with his cutter and his strikeout rate's down. But bottom line, this guy is a stud. Okay. He's a big body guy. He's thrown over 190 innings the last 3 years running. He's one of the most elite pitchers in Major League Baseball. He also kind of figured out what was wrong with his cutter last year. He went through a really bad August. He went back into the pitching lab, kind of worked on it, figured it out. And started to get the swing and miss back on his cutter, at least back to what it was a year or two prior. He's also learned to pitch a little bit more efficiently and to contact. He's got tremendous control and command. And that might be a factor in his considerations too, because Diamondbacks traditionally have a really good defense. Obviously, we're going to talk about Naylor in a minute, and they're going to, they took a hit at first base, but, they still got very good outfield defense. They're very good around the infield. They got a great catcher in Gabriel Moreno. So, with that kind of defense behind him, there's no reason he shouldn't, be at the same level or even higher than he's been the last couple of years. That coupled with Zach Gallen, who I think the D-backs are going to hold on to. They want to win in 2025. You don't do this if you're not going to win. If they were going to trade Gallen, they would have done it, before this because he's only got 1 year left to control. right? With 1 year left to control, you're not going to get that much. When the Brewers traded Corbin Burnes, they got DL Hall and Joey Ortiz. DL Hall's got some potential, and Joey Ortiz is a really good defender, but let's be honest. I mean, that's not exactly a haul. But there was only 1 year left to control. So, you look at that 1-2 punch. What's that?
Is Gallen re-signable for the Diamondbacks? Is there a world where they could bring him back?
No. In his case, he's going to go max out. And also, I think he wants to go back east at some point. He likes Arizona, but he's an East Coast and New Jersey guy, and I think he's going to end up on the East Coast somewhere. I mean, you never know. Never say never, right? But in his case, he's probably going to get $250 million guaranteed, as long as he's healthy this year and doesn't have an issue with his arm or elbow or whatever. So one of the articles I just wrote, I kind of speculated, of course, I was kind of poking the bear a little bit, but I asked, do the Diamondbacks actually have a better rotation than the Dodgers? And, on a quality per inning basis, no. Right? If the Dodger pitchers, their top 4 or 5 guys all managed to make 25 plus starts, then on a quality per inning basis, they're going to be the best rotation in baseball. But what are the odds of that happening? I mean, Ohtani's coming off his second Tommy John. He's not going to be ready to pitch in April because he's still recovering from labrum surgery. So he's probably not even going to pitch until late April or May or something like that. And how long is it going to take to get him built up and get innings? Yamamoto, his first year in the majors, he pitched 90 innings, and he had an injury. And it's tough for starters to come over from Japan and get to that 5-day, 4 days rest, 5 days rest workload of getting close to 30 starts in their first or second year. Tyler Glasnow, last year made 22 starts, was shut down after, August 10th with a sprained elbow. 22 starts was his career high in starts.
Yeah.
Tony Gonsolin missed all of 2024. And Blake Snell, he's won 2 Cy Youngs. Outside of those 2 seasons, 2018 and 2023, he's never topped 130 innings in a season. So how many innings can you project those guys to actually pitch as a group? And then you turn around, you got Burnes and Gallen, who've each made over 90 starts the last 3 years, right? Jordan Montgomery may be traded, but he's actually been a pretty durable pitcher. The only reason he was limited to 22 starts last year was poor performance. Brandon Pfaadt is a very durable pitcher, and then you add to that Merrill Kelly and Eduardo Rodriguez. They both had shoulder issues. They missed 4 months last year, but they recovered and pitched well enough in August and September that, if they can, it's not much of a stretch for those guys to get back up over 25 starts. So, if you're projecting the total number of innings, you have to project the Diamondbacks rotation and have a lot more innings pitched out of the top 6 or 7 guys than the Dodgers.
Yeah, and one last thing is that if Gallen his leaving is an inevitability, then Burnes is a way that you replace that. You make this move now, and you got 1 year where you got them together, but you're still going to have a pretty good rotation, even with Gallen leaving potentially. So, it was a go for it move, and it'll be fun to watch this year. Now, Diamondbacks also had to replace their first baseman, Christian Walker, who got 3 years, $60 million from the Astros. Before we dive into how they replaced him, do you like the signing for the Astros?
I think I like the idea. First of all, I love Christian Walker, right? Both as a player and as a person. What he built himself into and how he created himself to be that excellent of a ball player is just beyond impressive. Blocked throughout his early career, first by Chris Davis in Baltimore and then by Paul Goldschmidt in Arizona. His defense was just, when he first started, and then all of a sudden, starting in 2019, he's working his butt off. He had a couple of weaknesses, his throwing and chasing pop-ups down the line. So what does he do? He turns those into strengths. by now he never makes a throwing error, and he's fantastic on the pop-ups down the line. He's always had great range to his right. He makes all the scoops, all the plays. I mean, just the work ethic and what this guy turned himself into defensively. He's a game changer defensively at first base, and that's not going away within the next year or two. Whether or not the bat maintains, question him. He's 34 years old, but Crawford boxes are pretty close, and that really plays to his pull power. So I can see him picking up a few extra home runs, playing his home games in Houston. So I think it's a great signing for them. I think they're going to have a lot more success with him than they had with Abreu.
Yeah, better hope it works out better than Abreu is what I was going to say. So the Diamondbacks, there were some different options, different things that were discussed. One rumor or speculative thing that I think a lot of people wanted to see was Paul Goldschmidt potentially coming back. He ends up taking a 1-year, $12.5 million contract with the Yankees, the Yankees are reshaping their team post-Soto. How do you like that fit for the Bronx Bombers?
I think not great, honestly. I mean, this is probably going to be something that a lot of people aren't going to agree with. Number one, I think the Yankees lineup is too right-hand heavy. I think they need a left-handed first baseman, or another big left-handed bat. Now, they could still add, but that's the first thing. The second thing is, of course, Yankee Stadium's a little tougher for right-handed hitters. And third is Goldschmidt's decline against right-hand pitching over the last couple of years since his MVP year. It was MVP in 22, but in 23, he had a pretty steep drop-off against right-hand pitching, and then it fell off the table last year. I think it was like a 675 OPS against right-handed pitching last year. And that's pretty concerning. When your same side pitching is dominating you like that, and your strikeout rate soars to 30%, that's a sign of decline. But he did better over the last 6-8 weeks of the year. So maybe, look, nobody's made a living betting against Paul Goldschmidt. And that needs to be repeated 100 times as well. I mean, the guy has just been, it defied expectations throughout his career. And so, counting a great player like that out for having one more excellent season is not exactly a moneymaker either, But I don't love it for the Yankees. It wasn't expensive, though. It was $12 million.
What direction would you have gone? Who would you have picked up?
If I was the Yankees?
Yeah.
They probably should have tried to make the Naylor trade.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, the bottom line is they need more left-hand hitting. I'd have to go back in, dive in. Maybe you pick up a switch hitter like Santana or somebody like that. That can give you some, protection against the right-hand pitching. It probably would have worked out a little bit better for them, but he's 100 years old, so hard to say.
So the Diamondbacks find their first baseman in the form of Josh Naylor. The Diamondbacks and Guardians linking up for another trade. It's like each year they play that little exhibition game, it seems, right before the regular season starts. And all right, so these teams link up for a trade. Josh Naylor, I'm a big fan of. One thing I like about Josh Naylor is he's a good hitter with runners on base. He's good with guys in scoring position. He's a clutch hitter. Big RBI guy, which I know a lot of the new age guys aren't big on RBI. I like RBI.
Well, I think if he's able to make contact regularly and he's batting in the middle of the order and he's not striking out too much, then he's going to be an RBI guy. I mean, it's really more the profile of the player. I'm fine with using RBIs as a stat as long as you have the context. How many runners did he have on base in front of him, and how many outs did he use up to accumulate those RBIs? In Naylor's case, he had a very good year last year, and his on-base percentage, I don't think it was super high. It was like 320. If his on-base percentage was like 340 with 108 RBI, it's a bit more impressive. If you're in the middle of the order and you always have men on base, you're going to have those RBI opportunities. So you have to look at the context of what was the rate of runs driven in per opportunity and how many outs did he use to get them? I mean, overall, he was a positive hitter, obviously, between his power and yes, he hit well with runners in scoring position. That stuff's, it just ebbs and flows. It doesn't devalue what he did last year, but it's very difficult to project. And anytime anyone tries to project that kind of thing going forward, they usually fail. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, fair enough. You like the trade, though. You like this move.
Definitely it was amongst the top moves that we thought that the Diamondbacks should consider. We've been looking on our site at all potential signees and trade options, and we had a long, should the Diamondbacks trade for Josh Naylor, and listed out all the pros and cons, and definitely fell on the pro side. I don't think they had to pay an exorbitant price. A lot of people were upset that on the Guardian side that they didn't get more. But again, players with only 1 year of control left have more limited value than most fans realize. And Slade Ciccone has upside in the hands of the right pitching coach and development staff. That guy could become a pretty valuable player, and he's got 5 more years of control. So, I'm not saying it's a good trade or bad trade, but for the Diamondbacks, they got what they needed. They got a left-handed power bat, obviously. Had they brought in a right-handed power bat to play first base, then, or if they did such a thing in the future, then maybe Naylor gets more time at DH, but he wants to play the field. He wants to play first base. He wants to play every day. He's going to have to hit left-hand pitching a little bit better than he did last year to get close to 145 starts, though. If he doesn't hit left-hand pitching a little bit better, I wouldn't be surprised if the Diamondbacks, gave him a few extra days off against lefties.
Be interesting to watch. Is there anything else, Jack? I mean, are we just now waiting for Sasaki? Is that the next thing?
He's going to the Dodgers, maybe San Diego. Yeah. I mean, that's I shouldn't say that. I mean, 20 teams, they're doing due diligence. MLB's made sure that Wasserman Agency, Joel Wolf is doing everything to make this as open a process as possible. It's just at the end of the day, the signing bonus means nothing for Sasaki, right? It's meaningless because it's in the words of his agent, the difference in the amount of signing bonus that the team with the least amount of bonus pool and the most amount of bonus pool is only a couple $1 million. He used the word negligible, and that's exactly it. He said, that his advice to Sasaki is consider your best long-term position, long-term earnings position, and the other factors that are important to you. I think the most interesting thing to come out in the last 24 hours was Sasaki gave homework to every team that's made a presentation to him to give him an outline of what specifically they would do with him to help him develop. So the strength of pitching development is right at the top of his list of considerations. He wants to go to a team that's going to help turn him into the best possible player he can be. He wants to be great. So that's the wild card in there. Some other team could outperform the Dodgers' proposal in this area. If he happens to like what he hears from some other team, with regards to how they plan to handle him, how they plan to develop him, what's their outline for developing him as a pitcher and turning him into a great pitcher in the major league level. If something resonates with him, then that would work. The thing is the Dodgers have great pitching development too. I mean, they're a pitching factory, but so are the Guardians, right? So
right.
They're not the only ones, right? The Dodgers aren't the only ones that are really great at that. So if you're trying to narrow it down, you have to look at teams that have a really strong track record of pitcher development and have long-term market and earning potential for him. I would say those are probably the two things if you're trying to handicap it. That still kind of seems to land on the Dodgers, but who knows?
I would be surprised if it's not the Dodgers based on conversations that I've had, people I've talked to. Sun Devils by how many tomorrow, Jack?
Win or lose by how many? I put two sons through ASU. I didn't attend ASU, but I live in Arizona, and two of my sons graduated from WP Carey School of Business, which is annually ranked one of the top business schools in the country. ASU had a well-earned party school reputation over the last 10, 15 years. They've really elevated in a lot of areas. So it's a great university. And just for them to be in this game after, coming from worst to first, I mean, it's just an incredible story. It's truly, I don't want to say Cinderella because they really earned this. I mean, they beat some good teams and they beat them, handily or impressively. So I think the game's going to be closer than a lot of people think. I think a lot of people are expecting a blowout. I hope that's not the case. I would not be surprised if this is within 10 points. Wouldn't shock me.
Mark McClune, I think he threw it out there on Twitter a few weeks ago, and he asked, is this the most shocking run in Arizona sports history? And he suggested the other one being the 2008 Cardinals to Super Bowl, and then the Diamondbacks to 23 World Series. And there was one other option. I can't remember what it was. I'm not as entrenched in the Arizona sports scene as you are. But, I mean, this is pretty shocking to me. I would say I was more shocked by this than the Diamondbacks last year.
Yeah, it's a tough one to handicap that way. Yes, I would say in general, this achievement going from Diamondbacks didn't go from worst to first in 1 year. They did it in two. Right? Diamondbacks lost 110 games in 2021. So they made it all the way to the NL pennant. But MLB playoffs are a crapshoot, right? It just is. I hate to say that, but it's true. It's not a fluke that they were a good team that played well and got hot at the right time. And that's baseball, right? Baseball, there's always going to be more parity than any other sport. So because of that, I would have to say ASU's accomplishment is that much more remarkable because it's really hard to do what they did.
Yeah, in today's modern landscape of college sports, where they were the worst team in the Pac-12 last year, move into a new conference, win that conference the first year, second year head coach. It was so fun to have a guy who was, in Scatabo, who was a potential Heisman candidate, and
right.
It was a really, really fun year. So, all right, Jack, we've got to wrap things up here for today. So why don't you tell everyone how they can check out your work, follow along on social media, all that good stuff.
Okay, so the easiest thing to do, our website is si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. If you also happen to go to just si.com, and we're within the On SI tab under that in the MLB section, you can find a link to our team site as well. But si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. My X account is at ShoeWizard59. And then beyond that, I'm on Blue Sky, which I can't even memorize my handle yet because it's too long. Let's see. So at Jack Sommers 59.bsky.social.
Well, Jack, it was great having you on. I'm sure we'll do this again next season. Fork 'em, baby. Let's go.
Let's go, baby.
All right, folks. That concludes our conversation today with Jack Sommers. It was a lot of fun discussing the latest happenings from the MLB offseason. As I mentioned, so Deal or No Deal Island is starting next week. I am covering that show on my other podcast and my other YouTube channel. I recently split this podcast into two separate shows. One's an entertainment podcast. The other one is a sports podcast. This is obviously a sports podcast. Hit subscribe here on YouTube. Follow along on Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you get your podcast, Spotify, whatever. And then if you're interested in Deal or No Deal Island or other reality TV entertainment content, go subscribe to that show as well. You can find all of it here on YouTube. It's funny, this channel is just getting going here, the sports channel. So please follow along. Please hit subscribe if you liked what you heard today. And we'll have a lot more content coming soon. Hopefully have a few interviews this offseason with some players, maybe some minor leaguers and major leaguers. We'll see. as we work our way into January. I hope everyone had a great 2024. Praying blessings upon you moving into 2025. We'll be back. We'll have a lot of content coming soon. So again, make sure you're following along. My social media is at Jack Vita Show on Twitter, TikTok now. I'm on TikTok. I can't believe it. Facebook and Instagram. So until next time, I'm Jack Vita. Bring in the dancing lobsters.